What happens when a successful entrepreneur who built a billion-dollar company and a veteran orthodontic specialist team up to share their stories of entrepreneurship and experiences in building a thriving business? You get the In Your Face podcast. Learn how to survive and thrive in today's ultra-competitive market. Now, let's start the show.
Blair Feldman here, co-host of the In Your Face podcast, where we discuss stories of building a thriving business in today's competitive marketplace. I was a practicing orthodontist for over 20 years, and now with my friend and business partner, Craig, the former CEO of a company he scaled up to over $1 billion valuation, we help orthodontists to grow their practice. Past guests include Invisalign lecturer Dr. Donna Galante and the CEOs of EasyRx, Gobi, Toothbrushes, and My Social Practice. Today's episode is sponsored by both Mouthguard Club and Retainer Club. Both services help drive new patients and referrals to your orthodontic or dental office. Mouthguard Club provides personalized custom sports mouthguards that are perfectly fitted for your teeth. Not to mention you can fully customize the design and even put your team logo on it. It's one of the best fitting and performing mouthguards available. Retainer Club is the easiest way for orthodontists to provide patients with perfectly fitting retainers at a great price, while also sending you a steady stream of new patients into your office who are actively interested in getting treatment. Over 1,000 patients already love Retainer Club, and it's easy to use online services to regularly order and replace their retainers without taking up your staff's time. Orthodontists love Retainer Club because their long-term fans continue to refer new patients to their office, and the smiles they created are being maintained for life. To learn more about becoming a partner office to bring in more patients, make more money, go to retainerclub.com/partner. Today, I am honored to have Dr. Paul Homoly. Paul was a practicing dentist performing implant and restorative dentistry for 20 years. He has presented his work on treatment acceptance and leadership communication at associations and organizations worldwide. Paul has created speaker development programs for market-leading dental companies like Nobel Biocare, Ormco Orthodontics, Pacific Dental Services, Dentsply Sirona, and many others. He's also written 5 great books with some amazing titles like Dentists and Endangered Species, Isn't It Wonderful When Patients Say Yes? And I think the answer is pretty clear. Making It Easy for Patients to Say Yes. And the 2 that I've read, Just Because You're Leading Doesn't Mean They'll Follow, and Just Because You're an Expert Doesn't Make You Interesting. Additionally, he's authored 2 online in-office training programs on case acceptance, and one of them is called Case Acceptance Skills for New Dentists and Making It Easy for Patients to Say Yes. I have to say, I've been lucky enough to spend a day learning from Paul at a course provided by American Orthodontics, and I'll tell you, it was a tough course. Believe it or not, he actually made us speak. So, but I can honestly tell you, I've used the lessons from that course in nearly every patient and staff interaction that I've had since then. It is totally useful stuff. It's a tremendous gift and a tremendous value. So, Paul, welcome to the In Your Face podcast.
Hey, well, thanks for having me, Blair. Yeah, I remember that course up in American Orthodontics. Where was that? Milwaukee?
It was just outside of Milwaukee. It literally was a tough course. There's a part in the course, and if anybody has the chance to take this course, I highly recommend it. But there's a part in the course where Paul makes you stand up and do some really interesting exercises to improve your speaking. And I got to say, it was incredibly uncomfortable, but you were such a great coach and you were so positive and encouraging during the whole course that it really got everybody through it. And I think I would say without a doubt, every single person there felt like, they really learned a tremendous amount. So I really appreciate that course.
Oh, I love doing it. I fell into teaching speakers kind of accidentally, Blair. This goes back 25 years, and a dentist named Bill Watson. Bill is former editor of the ADA News. He came up to me at the time. He was the head of CE at Baylor University. He came up to me, he says, Homoly, he says, I love listening to you speak. You're so full of it. Where do you get this energy? I'd love for you to come to Baylor and talk to some of our professors and how to give more interesting lectures. And, at the time, Blair, I wasn't teaching speakers. I was lecturing on implant dentistry, as you know. I was talking about practice management. I wasn't teaching speakers to speak. He said, come on, Homoly, do it. I said, Bill, I don't know. It's really not in my wheelhouse. He said, I'll pay you to do it. I said, okay. I said, that's the magic word. Bill's a terrific guy. And so I went to Baylor and I spent the day. We call it Teach the Teachers. And I had the endo professors and the operative professors, and I had no PowerPoints. I had nothing. I just walked in there and I talked about it. How do you make it easy for students to learn? How do you do that? And I'll show you the way I do it. And then I just told stories and demonstrated things. And we had such a blast doing it, Blair, that Bill encouraged me to kind of develop the program. Well, year after year after year, and I ended up writing 2 books on the topic, traveling literally around the world teaching it. I developed key opinion leader development programs for a lot of those companies that you mentioned. And the really interesting part about it is that, if you look at the main A circuit speakers, so many of them have been through my programs now. And I look at the quality of speaking in front of the room now. And I'm proud to be part of that. Dentistry deserves great speakers. We have such a valuable process that we can offer the marketplace. And boy, if anybody needs to be a great speaker, a great communicator, a great influencer, it needs to be a dentist or a dentist team members. Patients.
What would you say? I'm curious. What would you say? I mean, I feel like this. You obviously are a natural, and I know you went through a tremendous amount of training, and you've received some very high levels of speaker training. I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit and talk about the idea that do you have to be a natural at speaking, or is this something that you can train yourself?
You can train yourself. I remember, Blair, my history. When I was 22 years old, I was in dental school, and at the time I had a class 3 mandible with a 1 centimeter open bite. My anterior guidance was on my 2nd molars. Okay, and I went through a sagittal split osteotomy. Dr. Dan Laskin did the sagittal split osteotomy, moved my mandible close to thing. I went through vertical pull chin cups, palatal expansion, edgewise orthodontics. I had completely to relearn how to speak. And it was during that process that when you can't do something, it's like if you go into the hospital, you stay there a couple of days, and on the 3rd or 4th day, you say, boy, I'm going to take better care of myself when I get out of here, right? Well, that's the way I felt about speaking.
And once you taught yourself to physically speak, I mean, I think in essence, we're talking about the stylistic portion of speaking, or the content, or the transitions, which I know we talk about a lot in your courses. But you're talking about physically speaking, which it's an interesting analogy to learning to speak.
Exactly. I didn't have the anatomy to allow me to say THs and Ds, and even to this day, I have to be a little bit careful about my phonetics. But you see, once I got into it, I loved it. And then I joined National Storytellers Association, National Speakers Association. I earned the highest earned designation in professional speaking. I'm the only dentist in the world to do that.
Really?
So I'm really pleased about that. And that's how you and I met, is through that program.
So I'm curious. I mean, this might sound like a silly question, but all the books you've written and the work you do is about communication. How important is good communication?
Yeah, it's just like slightly less important than oxygen. I mean, when you think about what we do, what is it that distinguishes us in the marketplace if it isn't how we communicate, whether it's one-on-one on the phone, on an email, or through a podcast like this? And unfortunately, Blair, in the educational culture of dentistry, how much is communication emphasized? How much did you learn about communication in undergrad or orthodontic graduate school? Here's what I learned: nothing. And yet, what do patients base their decisions on to receive care if it isn't how they feel about the communication or the relationship? Communication and relationship, they're kind of like the same, they're on the same coin, they're kind of on the opposite sides of the same coin, aren't they? How do you build relationship? Through communication. What does good communication yield? Good relationships, you see? So if there's any profession that we need to be good influencers and good relationship builders, is in dentistry, because of dentistry's negative history of being painful and uncomfortable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious. I mean, I'm sure you do in the dental field, and I know you've actually taught speakers outside of the dental field and other sales areas, because we talked about that. But in the dental field, what do dentists typically get wrong in the communication process, or what's their biggest hang up? What's their challenge?
Well, in the dental field, when you take communication and bring it into the doctor-patient or the team-patient relationship, the big hang-up there is we're content experts, and in the case presentation process, we tend to over-educate patients. We feel like we need to teach them what we know about dental. And what happens a lot, I would say 99% of the time, dentists spend so much time talking about, well, here's what's wrong with your teeth, and here's how we're going to fix them. Here's one way of doing it. Here's another way of doing it. Here's another way of doing it. And here are the benefits, risks, and options to treatment. And here's what will happen if you don't do it. What happens is that people simply get overwhelmed. And what we do is we create too much complexity around the conversation. The root problem here is that we've been seduced, Blair, we've been seduced into believing that the driver of treatment acceptance is patient education. You hear it all the time. Educate, educate, educate. Take any course on case acceptance, and they're going to say photographs, study models, patient education, right? You're going to hear it all the time. But let me ask you, how many times have we sat down with a patient, done a complete exam, right? Let's say they need a lot of care. Let's say it's $15,000, $20,000 worth of dentistry. They need a lot of care. You sit down, show them the photos, show them everything that's wrong, go through the whole list of how we're going to fix it. How often do these patients say to providers, well, doc, I want to go home and what? Think about it. Right. And our knee-jerk reaction to all of that is, oh, well, they got low dental IQ. We didn't educate them enough. And what I would say at the core of it, and this was your question, what's the hang-up? The hang-up is the cultural belief that education is the driver of case acceptance. I believe that's true at the modest care level, Blair, when it's a couple fillings or maybe a crown and a cleaning, when those fees are under $2,000 or $3,000, modest care. But once those fees get up there, once those fees get above $5,000, then the impact or the influence of education diminishes. And what happens, the driver of case acceptance becomes understanding, not educating, but rather understanding patients to why they want their teeth fixed and how it has to fit into their life. So it's a switch. And that's really at the core of my online programs and the seminars that I teach on case acceptance. How do you give patients the experience of being understood as opposed to how do you educate? Now, let me be quick to say, Blair, I'm not against patient education. But you see, for me, patient education is not so much about influence. Patient education is, number one, about prevention, right? Educate patients to prevent disease. And number two, patient education is about consent, right? That's the core of it. But how much of education is really about influence? Come on, if education was influencing to the level that we'd like, then we'd all have, if education was the key, we'd all have ideal body weight and perfect blood chemistry and fully funded retirement plans, right?
So I'm curious, in your coaching, what do you address, all types of situation, financial, giving patients bad news about, their current oral condition? Do you address, communicating with staff, or are you sort of focused on one area?
No, it's the entire team. It's the dentist, the chairside assistants, the front desk people, the dental hygienist. I also look into how they market their practice, the new patient experience, the new patient process, how they schedule, how the actual sequence of the new patient process. That's one of the things that's easiest to fix. But Blair, I get more pushback from this one. I'll give you one trick right now that will change the way complex care patients, I'm talking about adult patients now who've got significant needs, let's say greater than $5,000. Most dentists, when that new patient comes in, who is the first person, the first clinical person that new patient sees? Well, typically it's a dental assistant who takes x-rays or a dental hygienist who takes x-rays and cleans the teeth, right? And then the hygienist goes, and I'm not anti-hygiene, don't get me wrong here, but now the patient the first experience is dental hygiene, right? And what do dental hygienists get into? Well, they get into periodontal care. Now, I asked you this question before we started here. How many adult new patients come into dental offices where their chief concern is periodontal conditions? What would you estimate, Blair? Yeah, almost zero or none. And however, what do we talk to about them first? Perio. Why? Because it's the cultural belief. Perio is the foundation of the mouth, right? Got to get after that perio. I'm not disagreeing with perio being the foundation of the mouth. But what I'm saying is that how eager are patients willing to listen to that? It's like you're going to buy a house. You and your honey.
So what should we say to them, and how much time should we spend on this? Because I'm thinking a lot of dentists might think, oh, I understand what he's suggesting and it makes total sense, but I don't have a schedule built for this. I mean, what do you recommend for them?
Well, you go out in your schedule before you got anybody plugged in. Don't change what you're doing now. Just ride with what you got. But go out a month or two, and then what you do is for that new patient, when they come into the office, the first clinical person they would see would be the dentist. Take that new patient to a confidential talk-in area like the consultation room, Blair, or if you don't have one, in an operatory. If you put them in an operatory, don't put the napkin on, and don't see them in the chair with their feet up. The operatory chairs have got those arms that come out. Put them side saddle in there. Talk to them person to person, not doctor to patient. And then you can have a simple 5 or 6 minute conversation. It would sound something like, Blair, welcome to the practice. I'm Dr. Paul Homoly. How can I help you today? You say something like, well, it's these front teeth and I get this issue over here, but really I'm concerned about that. At this point, I would get curious about, well, what is it about this that gets in your way? I would say, well, Blair, you mentioned to me it's been a while since you've been to the dentist. What makes this tooth important for you now? What's going on for you? You say, well, I'm starting a new business and I'm in front of investors and I'm speaking and I want to look good. Well, see, right then, now I know why you want your teeth fixed. You see, in the old way of doing things, the patient would come in and say, hey, I want this tooth fixed. 99% of dentists would start thinking how to fix the tooth. And what I'm saying, remain curious about why they want their tooth fixed. And this is especially relevant when those cases get more complicated. Does that make sense, Blair?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I'm curious, in a practice that may be a busier practice, how do you take that information that you've got from that initial interview and share it with the other team members so that sort of everyone's on the same page, and even share it with yourself when they come back, 6-8 weeks later? Do you have certain tools that you recommend or certain ways to address this in the notes? How do you pick up for the conversation from where you left off?
And absolutely. It's the same way we track medical history or periodontal charting. I created a form called a Discovery Guide. And the Discovery Guide is where we map the behavioral characteristics of the patients. I call it standard of caring. Standard of caring is when you give patients experiences that to be well cared for. And there are certain processes within standard of caring. And one of the processes is documenting what is the patient's chief condition, what is the chief disability, or how does that condition negatively influence their lifestyle, what's the behavioral benefit they're seeking, and how do they need to fit this into their life. All of that goes onto a Discovery Guide. So at subsequent appointments, we can review these behavior-based conversations just like we would review a patient's medical history or their periodontal chart. No different. The culture of dentistry has not been behaviorally oriented as we've been technically oriented.
Makes sense. It makes sense. I'm curious, for a dentist that would say to you, something like, maybe his staff or his team said something, you should check out Dr. Homoly. He's just so great. He's got great information. And if the dentist says, my communication skills are fine, why should I invest in a course like this? What's your answer for somebody, for someone maybe who's not in the growth mindset, or who's sort of limited in their scope? What powerful terms would you use to tell them what's the benefit of them of improving their communication?
Blair, the dental office is not a safe haven for the uninspired. Okay,
I like that.
And there are some.
What's the negative? Why is it not a safe haven? What happens if they're uninspired?
Yeah, it's not as inspired. It's the dentist or the team members who simply are not growth oriented. And to tell you the truth, I don't have a solution. I don't think anybody has a solution for that. What typically makes people ready are life events. The dentist can't pay his or her bills, or team members quitting, or there's some negative event that occurs in their life that kind of jars them back to reality.
Mm.
I saw a good quote the other day. The quote was, change is the reality, collaboration is the strategy, right?
Mm. Mm.
And so when dentists or team members are forced to change, irrevocable change, irreversible change, oftentimes that pushes them out of their comfort zone. Then what I do is I have layers of offering that a person can get into it very simply and very inexpensively. Read the book or go online. I've got videos online that are free, and if they like what they hear, if they like what they see, then they can get involved in more and more. And the way
I'll put my vote in for the book, just for people who are, considering something like this. The books are very parable. They're very story told, which I think is unique in the dental field. I think, you get a lot of advisors that it's kind of what we were talking about patient education. And I'm sure this is intentional on your part, but they're not fact-based and just killing you with information. They're very story-based, interspersed. I mean, in your talks, you talk about the wave between emotional and what's the other side? Is it educational?
Logical appeal. Yeah, the oscillation between emotional and logical appeal.
Yeah, which is so useful, and that's one of the tools. There are many tools that I use from what I learned from you, but that's one of the ones I try to incorporate in every conversation I have. That I don't spend too much time in the the educational side, the information side. I spend I kind of try to really alternate between informational and emotional because you can see your audience improving. But I would say the books really do a great job of touching that. And from an entry point status, which what we were talking about, it's super easy. I mean, these are great books. They're great stories. It makes you scratch your head and wonder the whole time, is this Paul talking about himself, or is this? And I think you told me once it's an amalgamation of characters you've known. It might be a little bit about you and a little bit about other characters. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
That's exactly right. If it's not fun, you're not going to learn it. You're not going to stick with it.
And these are fun. These books they're super fun. They're really great stories. So I highly recommend trying out any of the books. And like I said, the ones that I read were the last two, and we'll have links to these at the end of the show notes. But so if you get into that entry point, if you're kind of a stubborn learner, you're sort of not sure, you started the books, you want more information, what's the next step? Where do you go from there? Where do you recommend?
The next step would be the online programs. Here, you don't have to get on an airplane. You don't have to deal with the coronavirus or anything like that. Like,
it's 100% coronavirus free. You heard it here.
Let's stay at home, right? Yeah, the online programs are very well done, Blair. They're very well done. They're very complete. I have one that's called Case Acceptance Skills for New Dentists. You see, the treatment acceptance process, the skill sets for new dentists really are about two things. Number one, new dentists need to learn that the treatment presentation conversation is about leadership. How do you create environments where it's easy for people to listen to you? How do you make it easy for people to advance in the direction of their own best interests? And I kind of steer them not away, but I kind of give them permission to talk about things other than dentistry during the treatment presentation. And that's that oscillation between logical and emotional appeal. So number one, new dentists need to understand that the treatment presentation is about leadership. That is making it easy for people to advance in healthy directions. Number two, it's all about confidence. New dentists coming out of school, boy, oh boy, how many of them could write a check for the dentistry they recommend? A lot of them can't. So consequently, they treatment plan chief complaints only, or this is especially true for young women dentists. Oftentimes, Blair, they can be mistaken for one of the team members. And so confidence in presentation, good strong voice, eye contact, rehearsal. Most dentists don't even know how to rehearse a case presentation. Their idea of rehearsal is explaining what's on the x-rays. That's not
Yeah, I mean,
rehearsal.
that's interesting right there. And that sort of relates to something we learned in one of your courses about really the rehearsing and the practicing and the body movements. And I got to say, it was something that was not even on my radar in terms of how can I be an effective educator, an effective teacher in terms of, when I'm lecturing and also, working with my team. And I got to say, those nonverbal skills are so critical, and you do such a great job of sort of pointing them out and the importance of them, that I would say to any dentist, orthodontist, any speaker, one of my coach's lines was always that the pros review tape. Football players watch their games, pro basketball players watch their games, and like it or not, you have to review tape, whether it's listening to yourself or watching yourself and recording. You will find so much information about, you'll be watching yourself and you say, I can't believe I do that. I can't believe I never make eye contact, or I stare at the floor, or I stare at the ceiling. You'll get so much information. And then you take on top of that and you layer on, some of these much more positive speaking behaviors that really ingratiate yourself to the listener. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about those nonverbal skills.
Well, the nonverbal skills really kick in when case complexity increases. Again, for the modest care patient, the young patient who wants to get in and out, that needs a cleaning, to tell you the truth, Blair, good listening skills, good people skills, reasonable fees, dealing with their insurance, you're going to make a lot of young people happy like that. However, when you get a person who's over 50 that has a mouthful of problems and they're sick with it, they're going to be looking for clues that you're the provider, that they're in the right dental office. And if you look at that over 50 patient, that over 50 patient is not only in the dental office, but they're also in their cardiologist's office, the urologist's office, the OBGYN office, the orthopedic surgeon's office, right? They interface with a lot of healthcare providers. And the medical profession is especially poor at the type of things that I'm saying right now. You go into all these sidebars with auxiliaries and nurses and technicians, and physicians are so pressed for time that when an older patient, when a 50-plus patient is able to sit down with the dentist, with the highest authority in the practice, to sit down in a situation like we are right now and have a conversation without a mirror or a handpiece in their mouth, it honors the patient. And just what we're doing right now, that is good eye connection, good pause intervals between our key phrases, smiling as we talk, and really being a good listener. I believe so much of the treatment acceptance process is simply about listening. What are people saying? And so, and what I get is, well, how do you put this all together? It's just let the best version of yourself come out. And unfortunately, dental schools and graduate programs didn't teach us that. They taught us how to be the expert. And I say, being an expert is not enough. You need to be an influential, interesting expert. Now that's enough.
Yeah, interesting expert. I agree 100%. And along those lines, when you're sort of working on these changes, how do you know what's too much communication and what's not enough?
You don't. It's an art form. And you just have to look in the mirror. You mentioned something really interesting, reviewing tapes. When you review a tape, when you review a video on yourself, you need to know what to look for and what not to look for. That's the big benefit of one of my books called Just Because You're a Leader Doesn't Mean They'll Follow. It creates a lens through which you can look at yourself and evaluate. When we're done with this, I'm going to review this video. So the next time I do a webcast like this, I'll do it better. I'm fussy about how's the lighting look? How's the sound look? How about that light behind my head? What about this jacket? What about this shirt? Is the pattern too busy? Those types of things are important. And when they're all working together, listeners won't notice it. It will seem natural. But however, if something's out of sync, people will pick up on it real quick. They may not be conscious of it, but something inside will say to them, be careful.
So maybe sometimes, I guess, the question about what's too much and what's not enough, it's not always what you're saying, or it's how you're saying it. So you could be speaking too much and not saying enough of the right thing. You could be speaking too little and vice versa. Would you agree with that? It's the content and the nonverbal that's really what makes a difference.
Yes, and what's a real advantage for us in a dental office is that we're surrounded by people who know us, our team. And if you're doing a treatment presentation and you have a team member present, teach them what you're trying to do with your own communication style so they can give you feedback. Some of the best feedback I got when I was in private practice, Blair, was from Suzette, my dental assistant. Because I would bring her to a lot of the workshops I was teaching on speaking. And so she would be in the room and she would make suggestions to me. And it was terrific because oftentimes where it's almost impossible to evaluate ourselves. So having a team around you, that's one of the best things.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one other question, I'm just curious, from the business side, how is running a consulting and a coaching business similar or different from running a dental practice?
Well, a dental practice, you have to show up. That's the big thing. Plus, in the dental practice, you've got, there's a long tail in the dental practice. That is, when 5 o'clock comes and you leave the practice, you're still connected to your patient base. You've got emergencies, you've got issues. It's more of a lifestyle commitment, to tell you the truth. And I'm convinced that dentistry is a young person's game, to tell you the truth. After 20 years, come on, your back hurts, your neck hurts, your ass hurts, everything hurts.
Yep, I believe it. I believe it. So, before we enter what we call our lightning round with our short answer questions, what's coming up in with Dr. Homoly, and how can people get a hold of you?
Oh, go to the website, www.paulhomoly.com. It's my name, PaulHomoly.com. And we're putting new stuff up there all the time. Pay attention to the online programs on case acceptance. Like I've got 2 of them. Case acceptance skills for new dentists. You'll like that if you're a dentist with fewer than 5 years experience, or bringing in a young associate. The second program is called Making It Easy for Patients to Say Yes. That's more for mid-career dentists. Also look at what we're doing in terms of speaker development. You don't need to be a front of a room speaker to benefit from this course. As you know, Blair, you've been through it. So Those are the 2 pieces that I would say look at. Plus, we get a lot of other goodies on the website too.
Great. So in our show notes today, we will put the link to your website, so it's on there. So now we're going to finish up with what we call our short answer or lightning round. First question is, if you had to read a book right now, do you read books or do you listen on Audible or audiobooks?
I read.
Read. Beautiful.
Yes.
What would you say is your business superpower?
I ask good questions and I listen while they're answering.
That's huge. I think there's not many people in that category, or there's not enough, I should say. What are you looking forward to, either personally or professionally?
I'm looking forward to going to Portugal. Sweet Lisa, that's my wife. Sweet Lisa comes up to me the other day, and out of the blue, she says, I think we should go to Portugal. I said, Portugal of all places, why is that? Well, it turns out when she was in chef school, her mentor, her instructor, is Portuguese. And he's got a big restaurant and a big deal going on in Portugal. He invited us to Portugal. So in June, we're going to Portugal. Yep.
Good for you. That's awesome. For people that don't know, you often in your speaking refer to your now wife, congratulations, by the way, as Sweet Lisa. Do you recommend that husbands kind of create a name for their wives like that? Is that served you well?
It's really helped me. It's really helped me. Absolutely. What's interesting, because I refer to her as Sweet Lisa, because I tell a lot of stories, that, Blair, about my kids and my cats and my wife. And if I bring Lisa to one of the conventions that I do, people come, they go, oh, you're Sweet Lisa. And so in many ways, she's part of my brand. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. It's great. I love it. What are you currently reading or watching nowadays that you would recommend?
I'm currently studying LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn for me has been much better than Facebook. Facebook, I just get lost in all the chaos. But LinkedIn, there's more business-oriented people there. I'm having some success with LinkedIn, so I'm on LinkedIn Learning right now, and those are video-based tools on all about anything you can imagine, how to play a guitar. Well, I'm studying LinkedIn right now, and to tell you the truth, I'm enjoying it.
Good for you. That's great. Well, Dr. Homoly, Paul, I would like to just say thank you so much for being on the In Your Face podcast. I know our listeners got a ton of great information, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
We'll have another lunch, Blair. I miss our lunches together.
I would love it. We'll do it soon. Have a great day.
Okay, bye now, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the In Your Face podcast with your hosts, Craig Weiss and Blair Feldman. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web, and we'll see you next time.